You see the new Thor movie?
No, I think a lot of people went out for it, and then at one point in time, I was like, I don't overly want to go see this movie right now. And I'm assuming it's gonna go to
Yeah,
Disney
Disney
Plus
Plus. Yeah. Yeah, I know for
fairly
yeah,
soon.
I
So,
know for a fact your brother went to it because I crossed paths with him in Victoria when I like went to like the game shop one day. So
oh yeah,
yeah, when they were going to it. But anyway, reason I bring this up, I came to the conclusion watching it that Taika Waititi, director of the latter two Thor movies, as well as other better movies, probably, is
Moana.
I've come to the conclusion that he is a massive dork, just massive dork.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
I
part
think
of
I
it
told you
is
that.
he plays Korg in the later Thor movies. Korg,
Yes.
big stone rock alien man. He is in he's very much okay, all right, I'm Taika Waititi. I'm gonna play the I can't make fun of it. I can't do his accent. It's New Zealand and it's hard. But he's just like, yeah, I'm gonna play the cool rock alien who's Thor's best friend and gets all the funny jokes. Like that is a thing that happened at some point in the production of Thor, at least Love and Thunder, if not Ragnarok. That was a thing that was going to happen because he's in this one a lot more actually. I think he's a major character, where he wasn't so much
Yeah.
one in Ragnarok. But yeah, no, he just decided he was going to be the cool rock alien with all the funny jokes, who also gets laid at the end. I don't know. Yeah, no, it was a weird dorky
Um,
moment that I just realized.
I liked him in Ragnarok.
I I have feelings about Ragnarok. It uses a lot of the Planet Hulk
Good.
stuff, but because yeah, and Planet Hulk, you got to understand, is like the one of the premier Hulk storylines, and it is just like played for laughs in this movie and not used to its
Yeah.
full potential, and it just bugs me.
To be fair, I'm not really much of a Hulk fan. Mostly because I think like the character of Hulk is kind of always been one-dimensional, and I don't want to actually have to think about like the implications of the other side of Hulk, where it's like a lot of Bruce Banner shit, because like Hulk just runs around and wreck shit. That's kind of the point that I'm at, where I'm like, this is all I need to know about like the Hulk's character development as a whole, and then like I'm assuming like the comic books gets into like some of the deeper and more serious sides of the Hulk that
You want to know a fun fact?
I,
In the
I wouldn't say
'60s,
is touched upon.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, in the '60s, they named Hulk one of the most revolutionary characters in fiction. That was a thing some guys said.
What?
Yeah, no, because
Okay,
that's
okay,
like in like a actual like revolutionary sense and like saying stuff about like society and stuff. Like these like yeah,
maybe I'm misrepresenting what's
yeah.
going on in like all the Hulk comic books, but I I I don't think there could have been a whole lot going on like in the early '60s. Maybe I'm wrong.
You are.
Maybe like a lot of the like political stuff that's been going around in the '60s kind of seep probably into some more of the writing.
A lot of the angle back then, because a lot of stuff hadn't happened then, as far as Hulk timeline goes. A
Yeah.
big thing was like it was meant to the one of the points they made was like it demonstrated that Hulk was this character that to an onlooker seemed to certain onlookers would seem brutish and destructive, but really when he was left to his own devices, he was a peaceful and could be a productive creature. And that was kind of where they were what they were addressing with it. And that the destruction that he caused was caused by like problems thrust upon him by the American military and therefore the government, and like it just like people's distrust of him, which led him to do actions that were ultimately bad for him and the people around him. There's actually a guy, SF Debris, who has a really good series on the Incredible Hulk called Incredible, which is ongoing. I think that it just did
Hmm.
the seventh episode of it, which doesn't even escape the 1960s yet. But it's a pretty good, interesting thing. But anyway, this week, welcome listeners to Kyle and Cody's Called CinemaCast. I'm Kyle.
I'm Cody.
This week we're reviewing the original Fast and the Furious, not the 2001 movie starring Paul Walker and Vin Diesel. The 1954 movie starring John Ireland and Dorothy Malone. John Ireland also being a co-director on the film with Edward Sampson. It's not a remake like the 2001. Contrary to what I've said, there isn't might seem like it's not a remake of this movie. They just took the title because this was just like a one-off film that never took off. Really, it made its money back. Budget of $50,000 and box office is $250,000, but it wasn't like the most popular thing of its day. And this is a film that's coming out like pre-television, so this would have gone like a lot longer drive-in life or double feature life. But it has no. They are movies about cars, but yeah, no. Essentially, they just when they were making the Fast and the Furious, they were considering a bunch of titles, and one of the guys involved in the Fast and the Furious was watching like a documentary on Roger Corman, saw this movie listed, and was just like, "Hey, maybe we can get the title." And of course, they trade off some rights to some stock footage and got the rights to the title, so they could use the title in the movie. There's both like most you can say is like there's like also like a mention of like no, I mean not even that, because this is a thought I had from watching like the first half of the movie, because in the 2001 one there's a plot about them robbing truck drivers, and in this movie the main character Frank Webster was a truck driver and ended up accidentally driving another guy off the road, and I guess they're both truck driver related inciting incidents, but yeah, they're not at all similar.
Yeah, what I wouldn't give to actually be sitting down and watching and talking about like the actual Fast and Furious at this point.
Yeah, no,
'Cause, I
this is
mean,
a
this
bad
movie, this is like black and white. Really didn't have it like a decent enough plot to really push it forward,
no.
at least in my opinion. Like, honestly, I probably would have fallen asleep during all of this.
hmm I
Like,
watched it in two sittings.
I had to drink like 2 cups of coffee because, like, you don't need 2 sittings to sit down and watch this because,
No, it's
like,
only
I think
70 minutes, but
total runtime's like, yeah,
to be
I
fair,
think this might actually be the
no,
shortest
no,
film we've actually done on our podcast, have we
I
not?
don't think it is, but no, I think actually the reason I did two sittings is because I watched the first bit before work, and then when we were gonna record this the first time, and then and I was gonna finish it at home and then record with you, but then you were like, "Oh yeah, I'm busy, so we can't record that day." So that's why it was two sittings. It's not because the
Yeah,
movie
that's
was
fair.
boring. Also, the first half of this movie is the better half, is like the better storytelling half of the movie. Sort of. I mean, there's signs it's bad, but I didn't give up hope on it until like the probably like 50-minute mark, and then I was just like,
Yeah.
I mean, I sort of did, but like I was confirmed like at the 50-minute mark that like this was the direction this was going. The movie suffers from being made in the 1950s. I mean, that like yeah. The car racing might have been impressive at the time, But even then, like, again, this wasn't like a popular movie. This was like it was okay. It went on some double bills. People sat through it. But it wasn't like a big hit or anything. Like any like what we're saying here about like yeah, some of the car racing's neat, but it's sort of the plot's boring and dumb. That's like stuff that was said at the time too.
I mean
But
that by looks of things, there's not a lot of stuff coming out in 1954.
yeah.
Um,
Also, I'm pretty sure this
Creatures
like
from the Black Lagoon, 2000 Leagues Under the Sea, one of A Star Is Born. So I mean, it had some,
yeah,
I guess, competition, but
yeah. This is there's a lot of stuff that like okay, what would you say is like a bad thing that happened to movies in the 50s? Those are present in this movie. It's very haze coded. Like I'm pretty sure there's a thing. I'm 90% about this. There's a thing in the Hays Code that says like criminals need to be punished at the end of the movie, and yeah, no, that's a thing.
I'm not 100% certain on what you mean by the Hays Code. So
Oh, the phase code is like the film code. Yeah, it's American sense. It's the American film censorship code in the 1950s, named after a guy named Hayes.
gross.
It like a lot of like these
Oh, I
mid
bet you
20th.
he was a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm sure. No, it like I am probably outspoken in saying that I think like mid 20th century American censorship boards were run by a bunch of fascists. Like say what you will, like a lot of that what happened there was like meant to like display a certain social view of society that was like very like there's stuff about like violence and whatnot. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of stuff in there that's just like you need to portray society in a certain way. You're not allowed to like critique people in a certain way. I mean, this is like coinciding with like McCarthyism like actual McCarthyism bullshit, where like if you say poor people don't deserve to die on the street, you're called a communist. Stuff like that. Which frankly, if calling someone a communist isn't really an insult. Let's be honest. That's just way to shut people down. Which yeah. Anyway, it's yeah. There's there yeah. The 1950s American censorship codes are a bunch of run by a bunch of fascists. They're totally on record of saying like believing a lot of fascist bullshit about like degenerate media. There's definitely records of like some of these things like fighting films with like African American people in them and wanting to like tell their stories a certain way, and there's a definite reason for that because they're fighting all that. That's a little bit more it's not as often you get like the outright saying like hey you're not allowed to put talk about racism in a movie. Like they do get past it sometimes, and like the Hayes Code loses some power in certain periods of American history. But yeah, it's not a fun old thing.
And when did that stop being functional within
It was dying in the 60s. It we don't get like a proper like rating system until the 70s, I think. I can Google
fair?
this, but yeah, it's bring this up because I'll be sure because I want to be sort of accurate with this. I know a lot of it offhand, but yeah, 1920s into the late 1960s. But I believe it was some of these things were losing power in the late 60s. Same with like the Compass Code Authority, which there's a lot of intellectual DNA going on there with those two things. It's properly called the Motion Picture
Yeah.
Production Code. Yeah, named after Will H. Hayes. Yeah, no, that guy looks like a fucking Nazi too. Yeah, they got a fucking yeah. He's the U.S. Postmaster General, and he actually
Ugh.
died the year this movie was made.
I really have like some deep-seated questions where like where does the Postmaster General's job end if like they're naming the stuff after him at this point? Because like I feel like those
Okay.
two offices aren't exactly exclusive.
Okay. Hold on. He was Postmaster General, and then he coasted into that to be the chairman of the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America position, which he took over the year
Okay.
after he finished being Postmaster General. Before that, he was the chair of the Republican National Committee. So that was his before job, and I guess he coasted off that into the position in this Hays Code stuff, and he would have been instrumental in forwarding that in 1922. No, yeah,
Okay.
it was 10 years later. It would have made into 1932. I think in the 50s it was kind of like in its prime. Cuz like really early on
Yeah.
it wasn't enforced all that well, and later on it starts getting like it starts going out the window as like a lot of the political power from it like faded, with like a lot of some of the nastiest shit from the 50s. Okay, yeah, I think I'm looking at like a list of it. Yeah, no, it does literally have like a ban against miscegenation. Yeah, no, yeah, it does literally. Miscegenation, for those of you who are innocent, is racist 50s talk for like the mixing of races, for like interracial.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's yeah. It also just like all sorts, like you couldn't there was no allowance for like depictions of what literally the code would literally call just like sex perversions, which can literally mean anything in the 1950s. And I mean that it literally just means like
Yeah.
anything that like like if you cannot describe something without like making reference to a piece of genitalia, it's called a sex perversion by these people. So yeah, there's yeah, and like the murder that's instigates this film takes place off screen. It's also just stuff like there's stuff in it like the sanctity of marriage in the home had to be upheld, which like can be used to nasty stuff. Like there's totally things where like you could utilize that to like fight against a movie where a woman leaves her abusive husband. Like that sort of thing. Like I cannot stress enough. I don't mean to like talk about this too much. But like this stuff can absolutely used for like absolutely fascistic ends.
Which which is completely stupid because like half this movie though is like all about Stockholm syndrome and this woman falling in love with the guy who literally straight fucking kidnapped her. So
Which we'll get into this a bit. I think part of the reason I want to bring this up is because I think it has something to do with why the ending's so bad. So I'm gonna
yeah.
save a little bit of this for then. But yeah, I just wanted to bring it up because it does color like all American films of this time period. And this also
Oh yeah.
affects like I'm pretty sure this affects Canada pretty well too. Because this somewhat predates some of the government money going into like Canadian films that like the government puts into the film industry to create our film industry so it doesn't get like bodied by the gigantic monolith that is the American film industry. And but the downside of that is like this does affect us in Canada a little bit because I think by the 1930s the United States had bought out like all the major film chains in Canada, like theater chains I mean, which especially early on is really connected. Theater chains are pretty well connected with like film distribution, so it's a lot of what's getting shown here is American films. And a lot of it, like again, like what we have for Canadian films, a lot of it is like financed by the government so that we can actually like compete with the American film industry, or at least survive with the American film industry, which is a very obvious like English language competitor to the Canadian film industry, and like there's just too much stuff coming out of there that like it'd be very difficult to keep.
I think when we talk about the film industry, I really don't think uh, people fully have a grasp of what that actually could potentially entail. Like, I think when I think of film industry, I think of like some of the blockbusters that are coming out, but literally there's, I don't even know, hundreds of films per year, if not more, coming out of like just America alone, not including what's coming out of everywhere else in the world, like Bollywood or Canada or anywhere else.
And we have it sort of difficult because it's like we have like a big like same language production of films like right next door, and it's really easy for it to like flood our market. Like Quebec obviously has its own it has its own little pocket where it can sort of survive stuff because they need their French language films, which they're the only major French market in the on the continent, so they need to make some of that stuff themselves. They're not going to import it all from France, which especially early on is a good bit difficult. And they do have stricter rules about like you need to show a certain amount of French language stuff, like an amount of French language stuff in there. And obviously, like any foreign language market is going to have a little bit of insulation from the American film market. Even the UK has a lot of spends a lot to make sure they have their own television industry, like television and film industry. Televisions has a little bit of a better standing in Canada just because I think that their laws were created, like the television regulations were created in a time where like they were more willing to like fight for that sort of thing. Like you have to put on a minimum amount of Canadian content to air a Canadian like cable station or cable or satellite station. So
I think we used to have more, especially here in Saskatchewan, like with uh corner gas being a thing back in the day. I think that we've kind of lost that kind of flagship program, at least for some of the, like, at least for Saskatchewan here. I don't think anything's actually really has taken its place.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a good history of like Canadian cartoons, and there's lots of sitcoms too. But not a lot
Yeah.
of it's like huge. But yeah, I think we'll get into the movie. We've talked a lot about like the film industry and censorship. So yeah, The Fast and the Furious begins with a like some footage of a truck crash. And yeah, this is like the inciting incident for the movie. And it's citing that the main character Frank Webster had essentially his truck and this truck had gone into a thing, and then this truck had gone off the road, resulting in the driver's death, which we don't see on screen. So yeah, and then we get our title sequence over like a car race, just random car race, which is probably pretty good for the time.
Sorry, I'm just like the idea of this actually being somewhat plausible in like modern days makes sense, but in 1954, like how do you get caught for this?
Caught for what?
Like everything's just like a, well, okay, so like what the charges that were being brought up against him would have most likely been like v vehicular manslaughter,
Yeah,
vehicular, I don't know. And like nowadays there's like cameras that can catch something like this, but this is
yeah,
like
oh yeah.
literally just he said, she said at this point in time. You could have literally just blamed the death on this guy and like just phoned it in and been like, "Hey, I just saw somebody run off the road into the ditch and now he's
They do
basically
they do
dead."
explain this later
Like,
in the movie though. Why he gets
oh,
like charged. Yeah, they explain why he gets charged with murder over this. or at least they give an explanation about it. Because they state later in the movie that someone else saw this happen, so there's a secondary eyewitness here.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's explained later in the movie that like after World War II, Frank Webster bought his own truck so he could do some trucking company, and this big trucking company decided they didn't want him doing competition with them, so they were trying to drive him off the road, and that backfired, driving the other guy off the road. So, and then the other trucker who watched this was able to accuse him of driving off the road, and the trucking company apparently has all the judges or whatever in their pocket.
Okay, so what you're saying in any regular circumstances probably wouldn't have held up in a court of law.
Yeah, easily, or at least he would have got like vehicular manslaughter, maybe, but yeah, but this would have been like
Compared to murder, I
yeah,
guess.
substantially less of an issue,
Yeah.
probably. I mean, it's always serious and
And
that sort of
if
thing.
that's the case, I don't know, just do your how long?
It's probably. I actually don't know what the on the okay. It could either be a really bad punishment or a really like lax punishment. Given the 1950s,
Yes,
because
yeah.
the 50s is an awful, 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 horrendous time in human history.
And also, I guess it depends on like what you're charged with. Because if you're charged with like driving while under the influence or something, it would be way, way, way more of a charge than if it was just.
And it's pointed out throughout the movie that people like look down on Frank Webster as like a lower class individual. Like throughout the movie, he's just treated like that, and like people can tell on sight. Like it is comparable how people treat him like a bit of a piece of trash at the best of times. I guess yeah,
Mhm.
I guess you can tell how much someone looks like a laborer. I don't know. You could do a lot more with this like you could do a lot more with this, but it's I think they're limited what they can say about it because of the Hays Code. You wouldn't want to talk too much about class politics in this. You might get called into the kangaroo courts and then get blacklisted from Hollywood because you dared to say that poor people are treated badly in the United States. That might happen.
That's such a weird thing to say because he's a
Mhm.
truck driver.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Typically a sort of respected position.
like I don't think that yeah, I don't think truck drivers are like recently they've been kind of really shitty, but that's because they've been transitioning over to like the mileage system where they get paid per mile or whatever. But like I think Walmart recently came out and was like, we're gonna make sure that our truck drivers are paid at least $120,000 a year. So like truck drivers in at least some aspects of the industry aren't being paid complete garbage. I mean, I could be wrong, but
So we get our opening credits, and we see a lady walk in who is our lead character, Dorothy Malone. Yeah, she's our main character. Like this is very much her story. Frank, like I think John Ireland gets top billing, but that's because he's a man in the 50s and he gets all the credit for everything. Um, sorry, 1950s. You did this to yourself.
I mean, you're not wrong. That's the
Yeah,
worst part of it. Like,
yeah, no. Like the cast should list Dorothy Malone and then John Ireland. Like I guess maybe Dorothy. Like what's John Ireland done? Okay, he's in All the King's Men. He's Canadian, I suppose. He got an Academy Award for All the King's Men in 1949. Sorry, he was nominated for an Academy Award for his performance in All the King's Men.
also, if you look him up, I'm pretty sure he dated a 16-year-old when he was 45. That was kind of
Yeah, true.
weird.
I don't. I'm not gonna look it up, but it's probably true. Like just given like Hollywood, frankly. I mean,
Yeah.
so many of them. He was in the gunfight at the OK Corral, which I don't know if is the famous movie about that. I think it is. It seems like at a certain point he starts starring in pornos.
Oh?
Yeah, no, like, I was just seeing some of these. It's like There's just a movie he's in called Sex Diary in '76. I don't think I assume he's not the main character because he's got to be 60 by then or something. There's like Carnal Circuit. Okay, that could be a thriller, to be fair.
He was in the 1960s Spartacus movie.
Oh yeah, no, he was in Spartacus. Satan's Cheerleaders. He was in a movie called The Incubus. I think that's a Canadian movie, actually. Yeah, no, he's in Incubus, 1982 supernatural slasher film. I thought that I recognized that name. Yeah, no, Dorothy Malone. See if she has. Oh, she's actually won an Oscar, so she's better than him. Although it is the year, she wins an Oscar 2 years after this for Ridden on the Wind. So yeah, the point is she should have shot billing. So she's walking onto scene. She is driving a 1954 Jaguar, which is a fancy car. I don't think they make Jaguars anymore. Maybe they do. I don't know. Which is like one of those 50s long vehicles with like a big long front end. It's really silly looking, sort of
Like
nowadays.
whenever I think of derby cars, like this is what I would classify as like a really ugly ass derby car, and apparently it's supposed to be super good in this movie. Like it's super low to the ground.
No, in the 50s, this car would have been like the thing, but it looks really silly now.
You know why I dislike it?
Why?
Because it's like 2 feet off the ground. Like it's not. It's like super long. It's 2 feet off the ground. It's a 2-seater without like it doesn't have any space to it or anything, and it's super long. And out.
Cars don't start looking cool until like the 1960s.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, or like race car, like cool looking, like sports cars don't start looking cool until the 1960s. There's some regular cars that look cool, like older, but
I just live in Canada, so I'm like, this car is like stupid impractical for me.
yeah. So she drives up to a diner, and she's met with this dickwad, who just like wanders up and she's like, "Yeah, that's a nice car," and just like hitting on her. She's not interested, so she's kind of pushed back, and he's not happy about her pushing him away, and is just like really rude to her for the rest of the scene. He calls her like high end sports car a jalopy, which is a slang word for like a bad car, like a rough looking car. No one uses the term anymore. Reading an Archie comic, I guess. Yeah, they go in there. She's kind of like talking crap about her, and she tries to order like pineapple juice, some like higher end stuff, meant to insinuate like she's a higher class lady. It also comes out that like she's a race car driver. Something I've noticed about like some 19 like mid century driving shows, they don't as much like come up with the idea. They're not. There's not nearly as many cracks about women drivers as you'd think, which is weird. Like I
Yeah.
guess that's a later thing. Like I watched Speed Racer, all of it, a little while ago, and not one crack about women drivers through until like the last episode where they had like a weird thing where like a girl, there's like an assumption.
Which is like it's 19. I was gonna say it's like 1954. You'd expect at least some form of like women should be like at home in the kitchen, like sexism bullshit going on at that point in time. But they're like, hey, women race car drivers. That's on the approved list of stuff that women can do according to this time period.
Yeah, and like look, there's an assumption, like this movie shows it, and like in some, to lesser extent, like there's an assumption in some of these where like women aren't supposed to do stuff that's like a certain amount of dangerous, but that doesn't mean they can't be race car drivers. Apparently, just that like, oh, if the track's super dangerous, they're not allowed to do it, which isn't like is bad, but like compared to like
Yeah.
some later stuff, like if you listen to like an actual sexist like talk about women drivers, like like you would like,
Mhm.
yeah, it's not even on the same pedestal. It's just like, okay, yeah, there's a sexist assumption here, but like it's not the assumption that like women are incapable of driving. It's a super weird thing. I guess it comes out a little bit later because there's a definitely like difference
Huh.
between like this and like the hostility to women's drivers. That's what I mean to say. There's not like a hostility to the idea of women driving. At least not to some people, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, there she's doing this. The annoying guy is talking to the diner clerk who or the diner waitress who's really also pretty annoying. There's also like a guy minding his own business at the far end of the diner bar. The guy that was bothering Connie, the guy that was bothering our main character Connie is mentions that he's a trucker and that the truckers are looking for this Frank Webster guy who killed a guy. And eventually this is that he's this trucker starts profiling the guy minding his own business, who is of course John Ireland's character Frank Webster, who just so happens to be trying to keep his head down. But he's getting profiled by the trucker, and eventually that results in a fight. And the guy who identifies himself as Bill Myers, despite being Frank Webster, he he punches the creep so hard that he hits his head and goes unconscious. And at that point, he takes out a gun and kidnaps Connie and takes her car keys so that they can so that he can drive off in a car and try to get away from the police. They do this while the waitress is in the back, and by the time this all goes down, the waitress arrives back and calls the police to report a murder. Two problems with this particular scene. First of all, they show the entire phone call for some reason, which they don't need to. It just, but also the guy's not dead; he's just got like a concussion, which I guess it's not standard practice in this period to call the ambulance anytime there's a murder suspect. Because I mean, the ambulance has to carry away the dead body anyway. So, but yeah, and eventually the cops arrive, and she explains to the cops that like, oh, this guy, I guess it was Frank Webster. He kidnapped a this lady Connie, and they drove off in a jalopy, which is she didn't see the car, but overheard the creep saying that the girl was driving a jalopy. So this leads the police on a bit of a red herring, which buys Frank Webster some time.
Which is weird because, as you've stated before, apparently a jalopy is like a slang thing.
But it would mean look for like a rough looking car.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, it's like a derogatory term for like a
So instead of
yeah.
looking for a nice car, they're looking for kind of a beater or
Yeah. Like an old
yeah. Okay.
like 20-year-old Model T or something at this point.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No, they're looking for some dumb looking that's like cheap and doesn't work very well. Instead of like what they're driving sport car.
Also, didn't they state earlier that they didn't have like a profile on Webster, Fred Webster, I do believe. Sorry, what was his
Yeah,
name?
Frank Webster. Yep. Yeah, they don't
Frank Webster.
yeah, they mentioned that they don't have a good idea what his face looks like, which is a
So
bit
why was
weird.
this guy just like, yeah, this must be the fucker that killed that guy and escaped from prison? Like, is he just stopping
Yeah.
everybody and being like,
I guess it was just because he was like kind of like shirking away from him and like being suspicious. But yeah, no, people it's almost like a bit of a plot hole that people don't know his face. You'd think if like especially like what if we believe what Frank says a little later about what happened, like the if we believe what Frank's version of events, which is like the truckers are coming after him You'd think they'd know his face. But then again, I guess Frank could be lying?
They'd at least have, like, a mugshot if he went to prison, though,
Oh,
right?
yeah. No, that's right. He escaped from prison at the beginning of this. So, yeah, he'd have a mugshot.
Or, like, at least it I
Unless
guess
he, like,
maybe
escaped custody immediately or something.
television wasn't a thing back then either,
No, yeah. So it'd be going on
was it?
radio.
Or at least it wasn't widespread enough. I don't know how people got their news back in the days, probably newspapers.
It wasn't in every household, I don't think.
Yeah,
It wasn't like a ubiquitous thing.
that's fair.
I think it was invented though. I don't know. I don't feel like looking it up. Anyway, yeah, so in the meantime, Frank is driving off in Connie's car, holding her hostage with the gun. He mentions that he's going to go to he's kidnapping her and taking her vehicle so they can go to Mexico, so he can escape the police. Which, yeah, that's a thing. Of course, eventually they're going to need to. Connie points out that he's pretty low on gas, so they're going to need to stop at a place to get fuel, which is going to give Connie a option to escape, and she tries to do it as he lets her go to the bathroom, and then he catches her trying to sneak out the window. So yeah, so she doesn't get away. But yeah, they managed to, and so that's the first attempt for her to get away. She doesn't really try that much, but then again, I think the assumption is that like if she tries to run, she'll get shot down. This is not a this
Would
entire
you
presence is terrible. Like,
I was gonna say for a man who's trying to claim that he's innocent as much as possible, like, probably going about it by, like, kidnapping somebody, like, is probably not the
yeah,
best way to try and prove that, but, I mean, sometimes, the system's kind of a failed system,
hmm
so
yeah. This is a
maybe
very
desperate measures.
yeah. This is probably a pretty problematic plot line. Let's be honest. Like there's a bit of like a Stockholm syndrome thing going on, which I don't know, always feels like a weird thing. I don't know the veracity of how common that actually is,
Yeah.
but it's very much like his actions from this part of the movie don't really gel with like yeah, well like you said, the apparently innocent Frank Webster or like not guilty Frank Webster.
Well, even the way he's speaking to her for half the film is like, "Yeah, don't move or I'll shoot you." Or like I think at this point in time, during the gas station scene, or maybe a little earlier, he threatened to leave 2 bodies behind or something like that, and it's just like, "What?" Like, you're supposed to be innocent, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm gonna kill you and your whole entire family if you move a muscle," or something like that, and it's just like, "Okay, this guy doesn't seem innocent at all."
Yeah, no, he doesn't threaten their family. He does say, "If you get the cops on my ass, I'll kill that cop and you." Like that is the thing he says.
Yes,
Um, I don't know, but
I was
yeah,
just
yeah,
hyperbole speaking
true,
at that
true, true,
point
true,
in
true.
time. I didn't mean he's actually gonna hunt down her family, but
Fair enough. Yeah, but yeah, no, he's a pretty big bastard through the whole thing. Also, which okay, the problem with this, and because we haven't really mentioned it, but this is a romance. Like this is about
sure.
like these two are like Connie and Frank are gonna get together at the end, which is the problem here. Like you could have easily had like a really good thriller where like Connie has to escape this criminal the entire movie. But I guess that's not what they wanted to do. They need to have a romance, I guess. Where like Connie
I
slowly
mean,
falls in
it's
love with Frank.
1954.
Yes, that is the reason they did it because 1950s is like a horrible hell decade. But no, I mean it's a good decade because suburbs. Yeah, suburbs make everything good. If you point out that there's anything else wrong with it, well, that's just you're a communist. Go to jail, communist. Yeah, this is the 1950s for you. Yeah, I don't yeah, it's like people talk about the 50s so much. It's like there's not that much good about it. Like the suburbs, that's it. Some people had houses that were kind of nice. That was the end all and be all of what made the 50s good, apparently. Fuck sakes. I mean, the rest of it's like characterized by like horrific racism and government overreach. But yeah, there's a suburban household that kind of looks nice, so that makes it okay.
And I mean, like, even like this guy's clearly like, sorry, the guy in the diner in the first scene was clearly like he wasn't a cop. He was just like a gun-toting like vigilante after this. I mean, like he was a truck driver, I'm assuming. Like, so he had some form of like he has some connection to Fred, Frank,
Yeah,
Frank.
I
It's
think you
Frank.
can kind of interpret Frank. I think you can kind of interpret that he's part of maybe the trucking crew that was trying to put Frank out of business or whatever. But I suppose that's the now that I mentioned it, I mentioned this earlier, but I think this is like the one through line between like this and the 2001 Fast and Furious movie is that those movies both have like a scene where like the truckers are taking justice into their own hands. Although that means two very completely different things between this movie and that one. So yeah, and again, that's a loose connection.
Fair. I've never seen the original Fast and Furious movie, so I'm assuming they're doing some good things. And this guy is kind of being a scumbag.
No, the 2001 Fast and Furious movie is like far superior. Which
I'm
it's
assuming,
not that good, but it's far superior to this.
yeah,
Like there's some cool stuff in that. It's still one of the better Fast and the Furious movies. It reaches like one of that fine period before like Paul Walker's character becomes too much of a cringy character, because like the cringe worthy character that he is in Too Fast Too Furious, which is the only one where he's really unbearable, and it's just because he doesn't have like a charismatic leading man to bounce off of. But yeah, he's much better in like he's there's some of it there, but he's not like terrible in that one. And this is also before they made him just like a cop who sort of like backs away from being a cop. Yeah, I'll show you the original Fast and Furious sometime.
I
They're
would
it's all right.
say I was gonna say like I'm assuming that you know what you're talking about because
Yeah.
I'm can't fact check you on any of this because I've yet to actually sit down and watch a single. I think maybe I watched a little bit of Tokyo Drift, but that was
Tokyo
literally
Drift's okay.
about it for like the whole entire series. Yeah.
It's the most underrated of the Fast and the
Uh,
Furious movies, which I get what people are complaining about, but like I mean it's not the worst movie in the series. The bad thing about it
yeah.
is like the guy playing the main character in that one has like a horrendous Texas accent, like a horrendous fake Texas accent.
Oh geez.
Yeah, no, it is like yeah, no, it's pretty bad. It also apparently takes place in like 2015 despite being yeah, it's a whole thing where apparently it takes place after Fast and Furious 6 in the timeline of the movies.
Oh geez.
Yeah. So like apparently 2005 Tokyo looks a lot is like apparently in 2015 Tokyo looks like 2005 Tokyo is what's popular. It's so weird cuz like that's a really dated movie too is the thing.
Hmm.
Yeah. I got to show you these movies sometime. They're kind of some of them are fun. Anyway, so they have to like evade Connie and Frank evade a police checkpoint and like make a U-turn in the middle of the night, avoiding the sight of a cop car. They do get pulled over by a motorcycle cop a little bit after this, who's looking for them, but the motorcycle cop lets them go because I mean they're looking for a guy and a girl in like a shitty police in like a shitty car. So he's just like, oh, okay, it's not them. which is a nice little way of like keeping the tension high, actually, because eventually they do like get some better information, and like that kind of like helps ratchet up the tension pretty good. Which is one compliment I'll give the movie. This was a nice narrative device to like raise tension, because eventually they're gonna like the cops are gonna piece this together. So he also informs them that their taillight is out, which I don't think it is. Which is a weird thing.
This is like the bare minimum that you could have gave them compliments for here, though.
Yeah,
That's my problem. Like, you're like, wait, the story actually has a climax. They don't just go to Mexico and like live out the rest of their days. Like, I would hope that like 1940s had like some basic level of like storytelling ability.
yeah, yeah. Like that is one of the that is probably the best compliment I am going to give this movie. So there it is. That's where the movie's getting its points
Okay,
from.
fair enough.
Yeah, no, like that. You are absolutely right. That is the one compliment I am giving this. This plot device, and then like the car chases are probably okay for the 1950s. Those two things are like what's going for this movie, and it's not worth that much really. Well, they
Yeah.
pull over so that Frank can give Connie shit. Connie throws the key out of the ignition and throws it away. He makes her look for it for a little bit. They do a whole thing. He tries hotwiring the vehicle, but then she presents a spare key. I guess to avoid wrecking her car. I don't know. The truckers, we cut to the trucker in hospital who's starting to like regain some amount of consciousness, but they don't. But he's not like he's conscious, but he's not like spouting words. So he got hit on the head really badly, I guess. So yeah, because he's the one guy that actually saw the vehicle these guys go in. So that would be their best bet for like tracking these guys, the couple down better. In the next scene, where Connie and Frank argue, which is the entire movie, and we get our first instances that is supposed to eventually be romantic, because fucking Frank slaps Connie and then kisses her like a true 50s guy. People in the 50s must have knew this was dumb, right? Like this isn't just some millennial thing we're thinking of. This must have been like a problem then too.
No, it probably was, but like, what was the sitcom?
Uh
I Love Lucy?
that's one of them. Are you thinking the one where it's like bang boom straight to the moon?
Yeah.
That's a different thing, but that's like that's like a family name show, but I don't know what it's called because I'm not Seth MacFarlane. Um
Okay.
I mean, you can look it up, see what it is.
Honeymoon's
Honeymooners.
controversial
Yes.
catchphrase was
Yeah.
apparently, yeah, pow, right in the kisser. Like,
Yeah,
what?
that was no, yeah, actually yeah, now that you remember, now that you jogged my memory a bit, mostly because I've seen like the Family Guy jokes. But yeah, that was a thing they did apparently, like quite frequently.
Apparently, like, the brunt of a lot of jokes in the 1950s was just domestic violence.
Yeah, the wife would like apparently backtalk him, and he's just like, "One of these days, Alice, one of these days," and he's just like threatening to beat
What in
her.
the fuck?
And that was like the running joke of the show, apparently, which yeah is
Oh,
alarming
Jesus.
actually. It's just like, yeah, this is funny until you consider for 1 second that spousal abuse is a real thing. I agree, in the fantasy world where spousal abuse is just something people made up, it's totally funny.
I have. Yeah, no.
Yeah, so they do some more driving, they avoid a checkpoint. They eventually come up with the idea. Connie was on her way to a big 98-mile race going from like California into Mexico, which she was going to enter. And they get the idea that they're going to use this race as a way to get into Mexico, which okay. I guess that it's a oh yeah, it's a cokey idea, but it's fine for the movie, I guess. So yeah, that's the
Why
thing they're
wouldn't they
doing.
just drive to Mexico regardless?
I don't know. I think it's because then they're not going to have to deal with cops for the last 100 miles because they're not going to get pulled over in the middle of a race car race.
Yeah, I guess, but it's once again the 1954s. How good is this technology? Like, I'm assuming there's more than one way to get into Mexico in the 1954s. Like, this whole avoiding cops in what I do believe is Texas is like kind of laughable, especially considering like I feel like we don't have that lax or that big of a border problem as or that big of a border at that point in time
Yeah, I don't know.
where the border system is probably a lot more laxer and
Yeah.
like going into Mexico is probably super easy.
Hmm. True. So yeah, their idea is to like they're gonna have to go to this like park where the race is gonna start. The truck driver gains some consciousness at this point and manages to tell the police that the guy is driving that Frank Webster is driving a Jaguar, which is means the police can close in a little closer. So yeah, they get to the race, or they get to the race area, and they're going to register, and they get told that essentially Connie was going to drive because she's the race car driver, but she gets told that oh yeah, women aren't they made a decision last night that women aren't allowed to enter the race, which totally doesn't sound like a big sexist plot at all. I'm sure these guys didn't like hear this lady who's like a semi-professional race car driver was going to enter this race and then just decided at the last minute, totally unrelated to this individual person, that she's going to drive in this race, and they just didn't make that rule specifically to spite her. I'm sure this isn't like a really sexist thing when you think about it for a second, and spiteful. So
Like a couple of like people's ego getting hurt by a female like race driver and they're
absolutely.
like, yeah, let's just like yeah, okay.
Yeah, they're
I see what
totally
you're
not
saying, yeah.
just like
Okay.
scribbling. Yeah, they're totally not just like scribbling a "No Girls Allowed" sign on. Like the second they see the little old Connie, what's her last name? Little old Connie Adar walking down the street to where the treehouse, and just hastily slapping one on because she's better at race cars than them. She never gets to do
Yeah.
any racings through this entire movie, which is a shame. Yeah, that's kind of such sad. Even though it's like specified that like her character knows how all the race car stuff works, and like John and like Frank has like a passing understanding
Yeah.
of how to do cars. He knows how to do the driving stuff, but he's not like an expert.
Which is weird to me. Like I guess maybe oh yeah, I forgot that he's a truck driver and it's like what the fuck?
I was gonna say he has his 1A, but I don't think that's a thing in the 1950s.
No, I'm
No.
assuming it's not.
You want to know a funny story? When I was getting my driver's license, I would like it was just convenient for after the lesson was done, I'd go spend some time with my grandma at our nursing home for a little bit afterwards. So I finished one of my driving lessons, and she goes to talk to, and we're talking about it, and she's just like, "Hey, you know what? You know how I got my driver's license?" And she's just like, "Yeah, Grandpa went down to SGI and grabbed some paperwork, brought it home. I signed it, and then we returned it, and then I got my driver's license."
Oh god,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah, no, no. She told me that was literally what happened when she got her license in fuck. Oh god, that could have been the 40s. I think.
I mean,
She
it's
was
a
in.
little different back then, but like
Yeah.
it
Oh, yeah.
shouldn't
Yeah.
have been.
No, let's see. She was mid 80s when she passed away in mid 2000s, which means she was born in like at the 1920 something. But yeah, so that'd be the 40s, or like early 40s maybe even, because I don't remember when they were married. But yeah, no, this was
Yeah.
a whole thing. Of course, this is a car. She's been here. Connie's been here before, so a bunch of her friends are like wandering around this place asking questions, and they're like, "Hey, hey Connie, who's this guy? Is he your new boyfriend or whatever?" And then they're like asking a whole bunch of questions because yeah, their friend is just showing up with like a random guy none of them have ever met, who says he's from fucking like New Mexico or some shit. But yeah, like, so he's getting a lot of questions. He goes by Bill Myers through all this, and they're getting quite suspicious through the whole thing. But in the meantime, they have to drive in a Frank has to drive in a qualifier, which Connie like coaches him through, and thus they manage to make their way and qualify for the race. Unfortunately, to do so well in the qualifier, they get put at the back of the pack. So yeah, that's a fun thing.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, that's a thing.
Apparently.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
it's how like it's how Mario Kart works.
No, it's not.
Isn't it? It's how Crash Team Racing works.
No. Yeah, if you do good in Mario Kart, you get put in first place.
Oh,
You
well, in
get put
Crash
in
Team
the
Racing,
front of the line.
yeah. Well, in Crash Team Racing, which is the one I've actually played more, if you win the race, you get put in the last spot.
Probably is arguably a better like situation. I don't know why Mario Kart does that.
Although it's actually less of a big deal in yeah, you're right, Mario. That's how Mario Kart works. But yeah, it's actually less of a big deal in Crash Team Racing because it's 8 guys put in like 2 rows of 4, so you're like only like 5 feet below the last guy, whereas like Mario Kart's in like 3 rows of 4, so you would get put way at the back. But yeah, I think this is how they do it sometimes anyway. It might depend on what like maybe Formula 1 does it one way and NASCAR does it another way, who knows. Someone who knows about car racing. I
I've
don't.
never watched any of those.
I've went to like the Estevan Motor Speedway once.
Same.
Yeah. It was very loud. I didn't care for it.
Very loud, very dusty, and it was like on the verge of like a massive thunderstorm.
Yeah,
So
that's common. They have pizza at the concession though, which is fun. Or they used to anyway.
I don't like Pizza Hut.
Fair point.
It reminds me of sad classroom parties.
It just triggers your PTSD. There needs to. I've been thinking about this. There needs to be like a word for like that kind of PTSD that we can like separate it from like actual the medical condition. Like just needs to be like for petty mundane things.
Well, I used to work at like KFC, so whenever like my boss tried to like boost morale, that's what he would do. He'd like buy Pizza Hut because it's affiliated with KFC,
Oh,
so
yeah.
they're super. I wouldn't say cheap, but like we get a discount for it too. So like it was like it's like the saddest pizza you could potentially get. And now that I'm working for a different place, like they're like, here's some tower pizza. Thanks for doing your job very well. Type ordeal now. So
Tower's like our big pizza restaurant here. That's for those who don't listen, who don't live here. Anyway.
Yeah, no.
So yeah, Frank also has like a fake ID that he can show the driver people so that he can enter the race, which he says he traded.
Why didn't he just whip it out for the guy in the first place?
Like the guy in the bar, you mean, or the restaurant, you mean?
Yeah, in the cafe in the beginning of the movie. Like, why is this even really an issue at
Would
this
you
point
give
in
your
time?
ID to some random asshole who was bothering you, profiling you in a fucking yeah?
I mean, if this whole entire thing, yeah, of course. But he even offered him a ride. That's all he said was like, "Hey, let's see your ID and like if you need a ride, I'll give you a ride somewhere."
Okay.
It's like I'm just drifting, and he's like, "Yeah, let's see an ID," and he's like,
"Okay."
like,
yeah, so you're making a bit better of a case there.
Situation could have been avoided, like, you know.
True. Yep. You've like pointed this out to me. Yep, you're right.
Like the only way this could have backfired is if guy at the restaurant was like seriously out to get this guy as like a trucker insider type situation going on.
Yeah. Also, a cop shows up and like looks over the like player registry or the racer registry to like see if he recognizes anybody. He doesn't. He doesn't even like check out the 2 or 3 Cadillacs that are in the race. Which would just been the easy thing to do. So that's another big dumb plot hole. After this, Connie and Frank share a meal at like an abandoned house where Frank explains his whole backstory, which you explained a little bit earlier. Connie tells him that he needs to believe in the law and that he should turn himself in because he's definitely not guilty. So that'll means he'll succeed. And Frank's just like, no, you're dumb. They're gonna throw me in jail. What are you talking about? Which, if he's telling the truth, probably true. And I mean, they're cops. Let's be honest. This isn't like a perfect system we live in, especially in the 1950s. So they end up getting after this. They get chased off into. They get and confronted by a guy who's wandering the area, and he's just says, "Hey, you two." He's an old farmer guy. He's like, "You two better get out of here. The cops tend to check over this spot at night, to like chase off the people doing the make out point thing." And Frank's pretty angry about that because he realizes that Connie was trying to get him caught. But anyways, they decide they're going to go view this. They have to leave, so they go to view this antique race so that Connie's friends don't get suspicious, but they already are. Connie's one friend from earlier says, "Hey, you don't seem like much of a racer. Seems like a rich man hobby, and you look pretty poor." And just like being like rightfully suspicious of them, but for very stupid reasons.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
like he makes this a whole like class thing, and not just like, "Hey, I heard on the radio that some young lady in a Cadillac got kidnapped by some random guy." You wouldn't know that about that. You wouldn't know something about that random guy who's hanging out with my friend who I've never who despite his hanging out with my friend I've never seen before.
I've got nothing to say to this. This is like honestly one of the dumber points of this movie.
But he's just like, you seem like a low class gentleman, and that makes me suspicious of you. Like, why could this have just been a thriller? Like, why is this like a romance thing? That's like the chief problem with all this. Because then it because like why can't he be why isn't Frank the bad guy of this movie? Like
I mean, why like is he the good guy of this movie though?
oh because he's the romantic lead and that means he's the good guy. Because if he were a
He-
bad guy, that would be positively portraying crime, and that would be against the Hays Code. This is where I'm really going with this. Is like because he's such a central character to the plot. This is just my theory. I don't know this for certain, but I think that because he's such a central figure to the plot, someone from like the film code came and was just like, "Hey, people might root for this guy because we've learned all his motivations and shit. So, you need to make him like redeemable." So they did that and ruined the movie because if he actually did all the crimes, he'd be likable or whatever.
yeah, that's what I'm apparently learning just as we keep on going along. Because like, I don't know what to say to this movie. Like, it's just kind of a mess, and like, this kind of explains why it's such a mess, and that's like pandering like to deep-seated like conservatism, most likely.
And like maybe I think like there's instances where it seems like the script's going strong for a little bit and then it just gets derailed anytime there's like a romance scene or like there's or like
Hmm.
most of the time. I don't know, maybe just seeing him being maybe like someone read it and was just like, "Hey, this guy's kind of shitty to this woman, and it kind of like for the entire movie, and it kind of makes the movie hard to watch. Maybe we should just make it a romance, and that'll make the movie more like digestible. Which, I mean, digestible in the sense of like bad fast food is digestible. Like it gets in you, and then you're like, ugh, this is gross.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of see what you're saying. It's one of those movies that are easier to, like, if you just don't think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because which isn't really like a, you don't give people points for like, oh, if you don't like, a movie doesn't get better because it's you're not supposed to think about it, which I think is a lot of where people get hung up on. Like, you can enjoy a movie without thinking about it. It doesn't make the movie good. Like if you're able to like I'll grant that like
Mhm.
sometimes there's like the cinema sins thing where like they take it too far and they're like nitpicking every possible thing. I don't think you can like, if you need to totally turn your like natural brain off to like watch a movie, that makes the movie worse. So there's like a, that's the kernel of truth there with like the cinnamon sin stuff, but I don't think it's not like a virtue that you're supposed to turn off your brain to make the movie good. But yeah, they do this and they end up wandering off. They take a walk. They end up talking to another one of Connie's friends. They get invited to a party. And they drive off after Frank thinks they'll get some help from her, but then she's just like, "Oh yeah, my dad's a police officer and he's looking for Frank Webster." And they're just like, "Oh god, no, we can't stay with you actually." And then and then she's just like, "Oh well, do you want to join the manhunt?" And he's like, "No." And he's like, "No." And she's like, "Well, I suppose not." And she's like totally convinced this guy's the like Frank Webster at this point, which doesn't come up for the rest of the movie actually, which is weird.
This guy has absolutely zero fucking cool.
No, yeah,
You
absolutely
have
not.
a fake ID. Use the fake ID.
After this, they have to hide in a ditch to avoid a police car, and then they have some arguments, and then they kiss and fade to black. Fuck this fucking movie, I have written in the notes. Cause like at the height of their argument, they just decide, "Oh yeah, I'm in love with you."
And that's it.
Yeah. And then in the morning, after they've like, according to the Hayes Code, not had sex, everyone's fully clothed. No bare skin below the ankles has been shown. This is a normal way for society to function. Don't worry. I mean, not that like them having sex would make the movie better. I just, if I give a shit, like honestly, I gotta remember my bigger enemy. Like this movie is dumb. The Hayes Codes is evil, so I'm gonna pick on the Hayes Codes more than I'm gonna pick on this movie. Like Hayes Code gets a 0 out of 10 from me. Uh, would not do again. They're like, they have their lovey-dovey thing, and he's just like, "Hey, meet me in Mexico." And he's like, "No, you got to turn her out. Turn." She's just like, "No, you got to turn yourself in and fight this in course." And he's like, "No, I'm not going to do that." And he's just like, "Whatever." And he just ends up locking her in the shack they've found where they had sex. Does that bother you, Hayes? I mean, he's dead before this movie comes out, but I said the naughty word, Will H. Hayes. Does that bother you? Does that make you turn in your grave? Good. I hope you turn onto a rock and become uncomfortable. So she gets locked into his shack, and Frank goes to the race because he has to race in order to get Mexico. Connie decides to burn her way out of the shack because she has a pack of matches. Famously, the best way to escape an abandoned building, made entirely of wood.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry. That's like one of the dumbest thought process I've ever heard, and apparently it works.
yeah, no, because she uses the smoke and the fire as like a way to attract other people to help her. This could have easily also killed her just through carbon monoxide, smoke insulation or whatever you call it. But yeah,
I
so
didn't even really think of like the fire aspect of it, like that still could have went so
Oh,
badly so
yeah, no.
fast.
Like, at least
Like,
she's got a couple days before she starves to death, which, I mean, is that off the table? I don't know. It's not, I'd
also,
put my
like on a
chances.
scale of
Go ahead.
1 to 10, how sturdy did this shed look to you?
Not very. This thing actually looks like I if this
Like,
thing literally just instantly caught on fire, I would not be surprised. Because I've seen some of these abandoned
but
farm
that's what I'm
buildings.
saying.
Abandoned farm building from, like,
That's
gotta
what
be like a abandoned homestead from, like, 1923 or something. It's probably made out of, like, the driest bit of timber. You're lucky like, its roof is probably has literal straw in it or whatever. Fuck, it's gonna you could literally just fireball.
like just like punch it, like hit it or something. Like I'm assuming it's gonna eventually give, and it's gonna take less time, and like
Scream some more. Like, just scream some more for
potentially not kill you. Like,
yeah. We're like okay, we're like you got a couple like what is the problem with like okay, granted, I wouldn't want to be stuck in any abandoned building for 3 days or whatever, but I don't think like I'd be so desperate to get out of that building within 10 minutes. But yeah, she eventually gets out, but so she doesn't die from that. So we enter the race and Connie's friend from earlier says you don't look like you belong here. I'm gonna prove you don't belong here. It's like, what the fuck? I don't think he actually knew about the kidnapping. I think he was just like, I think this is just purely a classism thing. Like, I have no reason to believe otherwise. Cause he's just like, yeah, no, I'm gonna school you, trucker boy, who's clearly not meant to be in these refined circles of sports car racing. I get yeah, so dumb, so dumb. Yeah, it's not like sports car racing is like descendant. It draws like a direct descendant from like moonshiners and shit.
I've got
Jesus,
like nothing to add at that point. Like, what is this guy's problem?
yeah, I don't know. He's just like I don't know if he's like jealous of like John Ireland because he also has a crush on Connie. That could be a thing, but it's not like specified. Like that's not stated in the movie at any point. It's just something like you could possibly infer.
Yeah.
So yeah, they have a rivalry
Okay.
for the last 10 minutes of the movie or 5 minutes of the movie. There's not much left. So after escaping the house by burning a hole in the wall, she gets a actually I think someone finds her and then rescues her from the building. I assume. She calls the police, tells them that Frank's innocent, but she also tells him where he is and is going. And she goes to borrow another race car at the track meet or at the race car meet in order to catch up with Frank, which she does by going on the main highway. The police, after getting the information, barricade a bit of road, which Frank drives straight through. The friend stops to ask the cops what that was all about, and it's just like, oh yeah, that's Frank Webster, and he's just like, don't worry, I'll get him. I am a random race car driver. Yeah, no, I guess this guy's Speed Racer apparently. Speed Racer would not be a thing for another 10 years. Yeah, no, that's a yeah. So he goes to chase down Frank. Frank drives. They end up chasing. Eventually, the friend drives himself off the road, and Frank has to pull him from the wreckage. As Connie pulls up, and it's just like noticing this, and it's just like, "Oh, Frank, you are actually a good person." And they hug and fade to black as it's like implied that they're going to face justice together or whatever. I don't know. I seriously think that maybe they cut 20 minutes from this movie so that they wouldn't do anything that would upset the Hayes Code. I don't know. It's dumb. This movie's bad.
Yeah. No. Definitely. And, like, I feel really bad for maybe the person that wanted to make a really good movie that just couldn't because they're stifled up in, like, bullshit politics of the 1950s.
Like I said, it's not like guaranteed that that's the case, but it could easily be the case. Like that sort of shit did go
Yeah.
on in that era. But yeah, no, if we're putting this in like the Fast and Furious tier rankings, it's near the bottom. I still think like Hobbs and Shaw is probably worse. I don't know. It's maybe I'm putting it like on par with 6, I think. So it's better than 9, and like Hobbs and Shaw at the bottom with like Fast 9, and then like this and Fast and Furious 6. Actually, wait, no,
Uh,
it's Hobbs and Shaw, Too Fast, Too Furious, Fast 9, this, and then Fast 6. We'll say that's the
you just
bottom
really
half of
hate
the ranking.
Jason Statham?
No, I just hate that particular movie. I like
Like,
Jason
how are
Statham.
you gonna compare, like, this compared to, like, Hobbs and Shaw? Like, what's Hobbs and Shaw got so going against it that, like,
It
this is
is
somehow better?
it is insufferable. I hate every minute of it. Like it is just I cannot stand it. So much bad stuff. Just like none of the actors are playing to their strengths. I think Idris Elba plays the bad guy in it. He's the best part, but it's so much rough stuff. The final fight scene is maybe okay, but they botch it by like having it take place during like 3 different times of day. It's also just like my least starring like one of my least favorite characters from the Fast and Furious movies, which is like I don't really like Hobbs in the later movies. I like him when they first bring him
I don't
in.
know who Hobbs is.
Oh, Hobbs is the Rock's character. I
Okay.
like him in the first movie where he's in, where he's a villain, but when he becomes a hero, I just don't really care for him.
Like, is his redemption arc at least, like, somewhat feasible?
No.
Okay.
No. No, it straight up just goes from like, oh, I begrudge like Hobbs begrudgingly lets Dom go at the end of Fast 5, and then the next one he's like, yeah, we're cool now, which is terrible. It's dumb.
Okay.
Yeah. And he become like in Fast 5, he's like making like you're taking like the absolute like advantage of like the Rock's like substantial physique to be like this gigantic like juggernaut of a man like toppling through a bad guy through like the bad guys in the movies because he's like the secondary bad guy and not like the main bad guy, and he's like really cool because he and Tobbs have to like team up at the end, or he and Dom have to like team up at the end, and they he's really cool in that where he's like this ruthless motherfucker, and then he just becomes a big cheese ball for the rest of the movies. It's better in Fast 6 actually, but he's just progressively gets worse through the rest of the movies.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, like they do also the redemption of Shaw's character, Jason Statham's character, is also really bad because Shaw is like he's the bad guy from Fast 7, killed one of the main members of the cast and is just like, I made some mistakes. I'm like, no, yeah, you did. You're a fucking villain from the movie, and we're just saying you're a good guy because Dom had a moment with your mom or whatever. I don't know. It's dumb. No, I hate Hobbs and
Okay.
Shaw.
I didn't know this was such a thing for you, apparently.
Too Fast, Too Furious is lame for like entirely different reasons. It's just like they take like the two lamest members of the cast. They take Paul Walker at his like dorkiest, like the dorkiest version of Paul Walker that exists, like frosted tips and everything. And then the one and his co-star in that is just like my least favorite member of the main crew. I'm just gonna look. I forget his name.
I don't know who else stars in that.
What did you do? Tyrese Gibson is the other character. I forget his name. I don't like his character. He's just, oh, I'm a silly guy, and he sucks.
Yeah.
They pretended to try almost kill him off in Fast 9, and I was just like, "Yes, kill him off. Come on, kill him. Kill the motherfucker." And they didn't because there was a joke, because Fast 9 is also a terrible movie. What do you give the movie, Cody? What do you give the 1954 The Fast and the Furious?
I'm gonna probably break my code
Mhm.
here and give this a flat 0.
Okay.
For me, it's black and white. Hate black and white. Hate everything this movie stands for.
Mhm.
On top of that, like, whole entire premise doesn't really like make any real sense to me at this point in time. Like, on top of that, like, car chases and like car races don't mean anything to me.
Mhm.
Fuck all in black and white, especially. So I would have rated this higher if it like even had like one redeemable like plot line.
No, I'm at a 2.
Yeah,
Yeah, which is all it deserves. I said, I was able to say one nice thing about it, which is a 2.
yeah.
And like it's of its time. And if this movie was made like today, like if this exact movie was made today, I'd be giving it I'd be giving it a 1. Like it's only the points I'm giving it are like because I gave it one compliment, and it because it is of its time, which is at least understandable why it turned out like that, but it is not an excuse for it turning out like this. So yeah, it was just like a really good title that ended up getting ripped off by a much better movie later in life, in some 50 years later. Which, yeah, no. Anyway, well, I think that's it this week. What are we doing next? That is a question I am not sure of.
I want to go to like something newer,
Okay, okay.
maybe something old, and then something new, like just so that we're not lumping all the problematic films together.
What do you have something planned?
I was looking at the 2017 Power Rangers.
Yeah, I could do that. We've been talking about that for a while. We can do that.
I don't know if we ever talked about this on the
I think we
podcast
have.
because I
Yeah.
know you're kind of a fan of Power Rangers. So,
No, yeah, we can do this. Yep.
have we specifically done this on the? No, we haven't.
We've mentioned it a couple times. But yeah, no, yeah. So next week, the 2017 Power Rangers movie in August. 2017 Power Rangers movie. See you then. Bye.